This conference
To
will now
create
be
software
recorded.
components and also ESR objects.
Okay. So, yeah. So we already discussed about these things. Again, we discussed about how to create all these ESR objects, right? So today we'll talk about creating ID objects, and then if time permits, we talk about channel configuration also. Okay, because I already covered these creating ID objects for you, but again, I'm trying to cover it once again so that everyone will be in a position to understand how to create these objects. Okay, so for ID objects, what are the one second. Okay. Okay, for ID, what are the objects that are needed for you? We already discussed about it. This, what are the objects that are needed for you to develop as part of interface?
Yes, sir. Business components,
Okay.
communication channel, and integrated configuration.
Is it business component or business systems or any one of them depending on the application that we are trying to connect?
Depending on the application, if we connect to SAP system, we use business system.
Hmm.
If it is a non-SAP system, we create a business component in ID itself.
Okay, correct. So you can call it as a communication component. Okay, so that it can be either business system or a business component depending on your application. Okay, or sender or receiver. Fine. So these are the things that are needed for you to create in your ID. Okay, so let's create these objects. So let's see what are the. So now, as my sender and receiver is non-SAP, I would like to use my both sender and receiver as business components for me here. Okay, so I'd like to create one new business component as BC underscore.
Seven, can you
Sender.
just zoom your screen if possible?
I cannot do it, but this is
Okay.
remote desktop. Yeah,
Okay.
I can do it in the notepad if you want, but this is application level, right? I cannot zoom it. Okay, so I'm using BC underscore sender to create as my which I will use this to represent my sender application. Okay, and I'll use a BC underscore receiver to represent my receiver application. Okay, next, what do I need after this? After this, what is the object that I need?
Communication channel, sir.
Okay. So for that, either there are multiple ways for you. Either you can right click and click on new and then select communication channel, or else you can directly click on new and then select communication channel. Anything is fine. If your communication component you see here, if it is getting auto populated, check whether this is a relevant communication component or not. If it is not, you can delete this and then select the appropriate one from this list. Okay, fine. So why I'm asking you to like consider the term as communication component, because wherever you see the name as communication component only, even though it is a business component for you, you see the representation as communication component, which means it will accept both business component and business system for you. So that's the purpose. That's why they have mentioned, they have represented this as communication component here. Okay, so remember, when someone is talking to you, the saying that you check this communication component, it means either it can be business system or business component. Okay, remember that. So now I'm trying to create a sender channel which is associated to my sender business component. So my channel naming convention, I'll provide it like this. This might vary depending on your project guidelines. Okay. Okay. CC underscore file sender underscore employee file. So now the next one is you have to select the adapter type. So as you know that our requirement is we have to pick a file and then we have to place the data in the form of a file. So it means it's a file based communication. So that's why we select file adapter. Okay. So when it comes to file based communication, so we have two options. One is, I'll zoom it for you. Where is the zoom option for me? Okay, so when I go for file communication, I have two options. Okay, uh, so the only option is when we say file communication, it means the processing or the data exchange happens via file. So when I say that I might need pick a file or I might have to place a file, so there might be two types of servers for you, file servers, because when you want to pick a file or when you want to place a file, you have to do it from a file server, right? So the file servers will be of two types. One is FTP and another one is SFTP. Okay, so for FTP or NFS, okay, both are same. For FTP or NFS, we use a file adapter. For SFTP, we use a SFTP adapter. Okay, so what is the difference? Um, okay, so your requirement, based on your requirement, if someone tell you that okay, you have to connect to a third party FTP server, then you have to use a file adapter. If someone tell you that if someone tell you that you have to pick a file from local application server, which is nothing but AL11, then again you can use a file adapter. If someone tell you that you have to use a data, you have to pick the data from third party SFTP server, then you have to use SFTP adapter. Okay, so FTP adapter will be having port as a 21 by default. SFTP will be having port as 22 by default. Okay, NFS will not be asking you for any details like server address, username, password, or port. All these details will not be asked when you select the protocol as NFS. We'll see that later. Okay, so this is how it is. So when you are dealing with file communication, so you have to understand from which particular server you are trying to pick a file or you are trying to place a file. Okay, whether it can be your FTP, third party FTP server, whether it can be your local application server, or whether it can be your third party SFTP server also. Okay, so in this case, depending on the file server we are trying to communicate, we will select the appropriate channel. Okay, so in our case, ours is a local application server, not a third party. Ours is local application server where we will try to pick the file from the local application server only, or the local folders. Okay, so in this case we go with the NFS, but whereas if someone give you options like you have to pick the file from third-party FTP server, then in that case they will be providing you details as server address as like this 10.20.33.44. Okay, and username,
So what
password
do
will
you
be
mean by
given to you.
local applications or a third party?
Local application server means third party means which is not in your network. Okay, local application server means all these API applications will be built on a database. Okay, because it has to store the data, right? All the logs, all these things has to be saved somewhere. So this PI server will be built on an database called HANA database or Oracle database or anything it can be. So now, when it is built on such applications or a database, so it will be having a file server, okay, or server locations where your all your files will be stored, okay. So that's what we call it as a local application server or AL11. Okay, so now when you say that you have to process the data or pick the data from your local application server, then we go for the protocol as NFS after selecting file adapter. Okay, so you can see when you select the file adapter, next thing is you get a sender or receiver option. If it is a sender channel, we select sender. If it is a receiver channel, we select receiver. So in this case, it is sender for me. And then transport protocol, I select it as NFS or FTP. If I select NFS, it will not ask me for IP address or anything, because this will automatically connect to its internal application server only, this channel, okay, on which this has been built. Okay, if I select FTP, then you can see it is asking me for server username, whether it is an anonymous login or username and password. All these things will be there. Okay, so it means this is a
It,
third party. Yeah.
it by default, it can have in a database server, right?
Yeah, all these applications are built on a database server. Okay, so if you see here, so if you see here, this SAP application has been built on Microsoft server here. Okay, so like that, all these applications are built on a database server, which will be having a specific file server access also to store the information. Okay, so if you want to know
Okay.
how it is, I don't have the access, I think. Let me see. Yeah, you can see here. So this is the AL11 or local application server, where you can see all these folders. So all these folders are nothing but your local application server where the data will be stored. So this is where we save the data and then process it. Okay. So like this, every application, either PI or ECC, it doesn't matter. All these applications will be having a local application server where which we call it as AL11. Okay, remember that. So depending on the file server, we will select the we'll select the corresponding adapter type, and we'll configure it accordingly. Okay, fine. So in this case, we'll select the file channel, and then our protocol as NFS. Okay, we'll just leave it blank like this, or we'll leave it as it is. So we'll discuss about these parameters later. So I've created my sender channel. I'll create my receiver channel now. PC underscore receiver, communication channel underscore employee file. Uh, Object already exists. Let me see. series. Why it is saying this object already exists? We don't have this channel. This fine. Sorry. Okay. I'm trying to create business component which is already available. Okay. I have to create communication channel. So this is my communication channel. Okay. So adapter type as a file. So my receiver is also file based communication for me, and also I'm going to place it in the local application server only because we don't have access to third party servers here. Okay. So I'll save it, activate it. Now I've created channels. Okay. My next object is ICO. Okay. I'll go to ICO here. So I'll select ICO. So for creating ICO, what are the details it is asking you? It is asking you for sender details. Okay. What is a sender communication component? So what is my sender communication component here? What is the communication
EC,
component that I have to use here?
EC sender.
Okay. Next, what is the interface name that I have to use here?
Service SI underscore.
Is it outbound or inbound that I have to use here? Tell me.
It is outbound, sir. Outbound.
Okay. So let me get that outbound service interface. Okay. So this is the outbound service interface. There are two options for you to provide this here. Either you can manually type it, okay, or copy paste it. Copy paste the name here. That's fine, not an issue. Or else you will get an auto populated option. But you're not getting anything here. Why? Because when you double click on this communication component, okay, business component, you see a tab here, okay, receiver and sender. So these receiver and sender are nothing but the service interface details that you configure here, so that you will get it will get auto populated for you when you are creating any objects, okay, or ICO. Okay. So as you don't have anything here, you will not get anything. Let me add it here. So for you to add it here, you can just add an entry. So I would like to add my sender service interface as part of this, so that I can use that. So I'll get that auto populated when I'm creating any object with it. Okay. So I'll click on add entry, and then I'll search for it. So you can see here. So this is the one we have. Click on apply, save, and activate. Okay. Now when you try to create a new integrated configuration using this BC underscore sender as communication component, when I click on this option, you can see now I'm getting an option here. Earlier I got it as blank, there are no entries, but I have one entry here because I have added this entry to my business component. Okay, that's why I'm getting auto populated here. Okay. Yeah. So also you have to understand one thing. Also you have to understand one thing. You can see the category here, okay, as outbound. So when you select category, when you have a category as outbound, by default you will get it like this, because we are trying to look for outbound service interface. So all the outbound service interfaces are displayed for you here, whatever they are available in that communication component. If you talk about any abstract, Okay, this is only outbound for you. Okay, so we selected, so namespace also automatically populated for you. Okay, or else you can do it manually also, like this, both the things. Okay, you can copy paste manually also, not an issue for you. So this is the ICO for us, where all the pipeline steps are grouped into a single object called ICO, which is nothing but our pipeline steps as sender agreement, receiver determination, interface determination, and receiver agreement. So sender agreement is nothing but inbound processing. Receiver determination is nothing but a receiver. Interface determination is nothing but receiver interfaces. Receiver agreement is nothing but outbound processing for us. Okay, so here what we have to do, we have to select the corresponding sender communication channel. So when you click on this, you will get the corresponding sender communication channel auto populated for you here. Then you have to provide the receiver details here. So this is my receiver, bc underscore receiver. And then you have to provide the corresponding operation mapping here. So this is my operation mapping, which is auto populated for me. And then my outbound processing, you have to select the corresponding receiver communication channel. Because you have already selected receiver as bc underscore receiver, you will get the communication channel associated with that component itself. You can see bc underscore receiver direction as receiver. So you'll get all the channels that are associated with this component, which is having direction as receiver. You can select any one of the adapter. Okay, so this is how you will configure the details. So in the advanced settings, you will have this option to use scenario specific configuration. By default, you will be having global configuration, but you can check this and then select the corresponding entry. What this is nothing but the payload, how the, like, what is the data that you received into PI, what is the data at the message preparation step, what is the data at receiver determination step, what is the payload at mapping step, after mapping, all these things. These are nothing but these options. I'll show you how it looks for you, okay, later. So I've created ICO. So ideally speaking, all the objects that are needed for me to create as part of this interface, I have created all the objects. But there is one more object called configuration scenario. So the purpose of this object is, this is not going to help you to run your interface. Okay, this is not going to help you to connect your sender or to connect your receiver. The only purpose of this object is to group all the objects into a single place. Okay, so that it will be easy for you to identify. Tell me, if someone come and ask you, go and check the relevant objects for employee data interface. Okay, if someone asks you, if I ask you to check what are the objects that I've created for employee data interface, what you will do, you will go to, you will try to see what is the um, sender and what is a receiver. Accordingly, we'll expand that business component or business system and check for channels and check for file naming convention, employee data or employee file, whatever it is, and then look for the corresponding ICO or see if this channel is here, and then we'll see where used. So if you click on this, you will get where used list. It will give you option that where this particular channel is being used, which particular object is using this channel. So if you click on where used, you will get this ICO. Then you will come to know this is the ICO and all these things. So this is an long manual process for you to identify which object is being used where. Okay. To simplify that, we have one option called configuration scenario, where it will help you to identify the objects related to a specific interface. Basically, we create configuration scenario like this: cs underscore followed by interface name, okay, interface ID, okay, or else you might be having interfaces with the specific IDs to identify a specific interface. For suppose, purchase order will be having interface ID as I123. Your employee data interface will be having interface ID as I456 like that. Okay, so I'll create it as I123 underscore employee data. Okay, so now what it means, so this configuration scenario is related to this interface number, which is nothing but this one. Okay, now if you go to objects here, I have an option to add, or you can drag and drop also. Okay, I have an option to add. So now what are the objects that I've created as part of this interface? We can add these objects to this configuration scenario. Okay, my BC underscore sender and receiver are relevant to this. I'll add them, and then I'll add communication channels. So sender and receiver, these are the two communication channels that are relevant. And then I'll add ICO. So this is the only ICO that we have in this application. So this is the ICO that is relevant for me. I'm adding this. Now you tell me, if I ask you to check, okay, what are the objects that some other person has created as part of this interface? What are the communication channels they have created as part of this I123 interface? Will it be easy for you to directly check these configuration scenario, understand these are the objects that are relevant to this interface? Right, this is very easy for you, right, to understand that these are the objects that are relevant for you to identify that are relevant to this interface, right, instead of going through each and every object type and then search for it, right? So this is the only purpose of configuration scenario, which will help you to group the objects that are relevant to that particular interface, so that it will be easy to identify. Okay, so do you understand the purpose of configuration scenario?
Yes.
Okay. So for now, we have created all the objects that are needed for your interface. Okay, that are needed for the interface that we discussed for file-to-file communication. So any questions on this till now?
Sir, for communication, why will there be only file transfer protocol? Why don't HTTP web protection and another protocols? Only why we
Ah,
will file transfer FTP
okay.
only
What is the requirement that I've given to you?
to transfer the data from non-SAP system to SAP system.
Okay. How you are going to transfer it? What is the mode of communication that I've given as part of my requirement?
No, sir.
No, I'm asking what is the mode of communication that I've given as part of my requirement?
Mode of communication.
Hmm. So when I gave the requirement to you, I
Hmm.
mentioned what is the mode of communication that I want to have.
Asynchronous.
Okay. No. What is a protocol? Okay. What is a protocol that I have gave you for communication purpose?
FTP. File transfer.
File transfer. So
Message protocol.
when I gave you the protocol as a file-based communication, ideally I go for file adapter or SFTP adapter depending on the server that I'm trying to communicate. If I'm saying that my sender is going to push data to me via HTTP protocol, then I use HTTP adapter. I don't go for file
Okay.
adapter.
Based on requirement, we can go for which type of protocol we can use.
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
based on the requirement or the based on the communication types that your sender or receiver support, you can select any one of the one which is feasible for you. Okay.
Okay.
So that's what I mentioned earlier. The mode of communication that you have to choose, it depends on your sender and receiver. If you remember it not, I don't know, but I have already mentioned that the mode of communication that you use, whether it is a file based communication or web service based communication or a JDBC or JMS or HTTP, it all depends on your sender or receiver application. If they support that, then you can choose that. For suppose you want to communicate with your receiver using JDBC. If your receiver is not supporting that JDBC protocol, how you can communicate with them? No, right? It's not possible for you. So
Yes.
depending on the protocols that are supported by your receiver, you can choose any one of them from your PI. Okay, here in this case, my both sender and receiver supports only file. That's why I'm going for file-based communication.
If if what if sender support one type of protocol or receiver supported another type of protocol? Is there
Hmm.
any chance to send data from sender to receiver?
Yeah, yeah. Let us assume that your sender is ECC. Okay, your sender is ECC or S4 HANA. Okay, where you will get the IDOC data in the IDOC format. Okay, where your receiver is third party, some application as a RPG, where they want to receive the data either file. So now what happens now, you will be using an IDOC adapter to receive the data from ECC, and you will be using a file adapter as a receiver communication channel to send the data to RPG. So your sender communication channel is IDOC type and your receiver communication channel is file type. Okay, or else if they want to have the data based on API based communication, then you can go for REST adapter. So here in this case, your sender communication channel will be IDOC, your receiver communication channel will be REST. Okay, so either you can use depending on the receiver and sender, you can use the corresponding adapter type. Okay,
Oh,
any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Sir, first
You
10
have,
minutes,
sir, you have given the scenario to pick a file from file server location and place it in another file server, right?
Yeah,
On that scenario basis, we are creating the business
yeah.
community.
So yes, I have given you the requirement as pick file and place file, right?
Oh,
So on
yeah.
this requirement only, I have created all these objects as of now.
Oh,
Yeah, someone else is asking.
my system was disconnected first 10 minutes.
Okay,
For this.
fine. You can go through the recording after this session and then let me know if you have any questions in the next class. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay then. So in tomorrow's session, we will see how do we configure these channels. Okay. What are the details that you have to provide here as part of these communication channels. Okay. And what are these details and what is the purpose of these details? All these things I will see in tomorrow's session. We'll discuss about both sender and receiver communication channel and the details that needs to be configured here, and then we will try to configure them accordingly with the relevant details for us according to our requirement. Okay, fine.
so
Um,
any lab assistant we will get. Actually, I did not practice it anything. Actually, I joined in 4 5 days back,
okay,
so I did not
but you
practice.
will be given with server access, right? You might have
Yeah,
got the server access by now.
yeah, I got on Monday, 2 days back.
Okay, then you can practice it using that server access.
Mm, okay.
I didn't get your question.
Actually, I did not practice it anything till now. I was lagging in the up to